I know that's a little bit of a click, sorry guys. Now, we are already live streaming, so if your mics
Okay.
are on, you might want to turn them off. Ouch.
Shock yourself.
Yep. Okay, I think it's, should be working now. What in the world?
Let's see, we're gonna have a lunch for school board this year. We'll have a lunch this year.
Does yours ever do this? It's my new computer, does it ever get to a white screen like this? So Joe, is yours ever done this?
What's up?
Has yours ever done this, or just go to a screen like this?
Probably.
Good job, okay, thank you. I should have learned how to use this before. Okay. Yeah. It is literally.
When Mike got elected, he came over and watched me. Well, that was a discussion that she would not have, she would not be part of the conversation. You know, she would
First time in 6 months. I haven't had
Just so you know, the live stream is on, so you might want to turn off your mics if you're speaking and don't want to be heard. The live stream is currently on.
working on the where.
Oh, did you?
What are you laughing at?
Because it's already live
Why
stream.
would that
Let me
stop?
show you the live.
I mean, I've heard a few curse words thrown around this place.
Oh, oh.
Do we know when the timeline is for that first beer place?
We asked for an update, and when they thought it was originally going to be here, it was on back order. So I know within 2 months, it's all going to be installed. so.
Yeah, so we're 2 months away from
Yeah, from a brand new system.
Good.
Yeah.
Because I know we budgeted.
Yep. But they were trying to rush the other part in first, so there's still hope that that will get here first, but we're waiting. Yeah, it's part of the new system. So it's not like a duplicate, it's just one part coming in early.
How much of that's gonna stay?
None of it, all of that's getting moved to IT, all of that will run from the IT room. Yeah, and there won't be cords out, there won't be this anymore because there's a different way to project it. Yeah, it's all different now. Yep, I'll have a like button to do it on a computer instead of at that computer. Maybe he's keeping that one computer there for everybody to use it, but like we'll be able to, when we're doing our live stream, if someone's doing a presentation, we can switch it so the live stream sees the presentation versus the camera view. It will show the speaker as well as the board now. There'll be TV hanging, like kind of where that speaker is facing council, so you guys can see there instead of here. And then also for the crowd. And then that is replaced with a TV screen versus the flat screen, which is why you don't need the projector anymore.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so. And this agenda item request, did you see that? I missed it, so missed that one. Whoops. Why did I move this down? No, one of those doesn't work. One of the USBs on that doesn't work. Which is why
crazy, isn't it?
Well, I guess it wouldn't matter, because I don't need this one. Normally, if you have this one, that's the only one that works with that side, is if you have this one.
Here.
You gonna bang it?
We'll start the work session tonight. It's a council work session, so there won't be any questions from the audience. Anybody has any questions in the audience? I don't even know if anybody's in the audience. There won't be, if we have any questions for the mayor or department heads, we'll ask them. So basically, it's council discussion on what we want to see happen in the next, upcoming year. We could start out with 1 to 2 year goals that people want to see done with the council in the next couple of years. There's no sense in getting into the 10 years because we probably won't be here. But the present ones, if anybody has anything they want to go with right away, let's throw it out there on the
Well,
table.
the first thing that needs to be done is people have spoken and we need to get that underway and get it going. The lake, we've got it, I feel like that's.
Joe, you want to give us the update of, I know Bar's getting close. Have they relayed anything to you recently?
Joe Schrader, Public Works Director. We've been working with BAR on permitting. Right now is the big ticket item. We're trying to get our permitting figured out with the Army Corps. Once we get the direction.
Like, when you talk about things like that, can you give us some more information? Like, what do you mean by permitting? What does that mean?
So there's two paths you can go as far as permitting goes with the Corps. There's a nationwide permit or there's a permit for the individual project. Right now we're looking at our options for a nationwide permit and what the Army Corps will consider if they will let us use a nationwide permit, and that just speeds up the process quite a bit quicker. If we do need to go for an individual permit, it is going to take longer. So that's where we're at. We should know within the next couple weeks from BAR which direction we're heading with our permitting, and then we plan on doing an overall update on the lake project, because that's kind of our critical path as far as timing goes for the project.
Yeah, it seems like the permitting, have you been working on this for a long time? It just feels like that would have been something that, like, the minute the election happened, let's get the permits, but it's not that easy. I'm oversimplifying. How unusual.
There was probably a little bit of a time gap in there. How long that was, I can't say right now, but I could figure that out if you do want to know that. But it's a slow process. You know, Mayor Hansen has been involved in those conversations, and we've probably been meeting since at least August. And
It might be good to update on like the bid schedule timelines, because I know that question gets asked a lot when we go out to bid for the drawdown versus the actual project.
Yep, so given we get to move forward with the nationwide permit, we do feel that the project for the drawdown itself could be bid late spring, early summer for starting in the fall. And then we would bid the actual lake project winter, early spring of '26.
Joe, are you still optimistic that the amount for the whole project, the drawdown, the dredging, falls within the parameters of what was okayed by the voters? Or will we be surprised, or will we be surprised?
I mean, bid prices right now have been the best they've been since before COVID. So I do feel like we should be set up well for good bid prices. This project's gonna be, determined a lot on gas prices, fuel prices, because there's gonna be a lot of hauling involved. So yeah, I do think we're sitting pretty well as far as budget goes.
And if it is way over budget, what happens?
We'll do
Stephanie,
like,
what happens if the bids come in way over budget?
That's gonna be
It'd be our
a,
decision probably, huh?
yeah, that'll be a council decision at that point, how you wanna proceed.
And I think-
If you wanna proceed.
and we'll look at it like we do with any project. We'll see if there's any valued engineering we can do, if there's anything in the project that could be negotiated with the contractor, if there was questions, gaps in the bid that made their prices not as good as what they could have been. But yeah, in the end, whatever's determined through there, it's a council decision for a move from there.
So to clarify, you expect to have this permit process completed, do you have any idea when that would be done?
So depending which way we can move forward, if we, in a couple of weeks, if we know we can go ahead with a nationwide permit, then we know the timeline very well.
Okay.
If it's an individual permit, it's gonna take longer.
And that's when we go through the core, in South Dakota, or is it,
They're out of Denver. Yep.
and so it just is a slower process?
Or Omaha,
And-
excuse me, Omaha. They're out of
Omaha. Okay, and then you're saying, I just want to clarify that what you just told us, that if all goes well, that you expect bidding could go out in the late summer
Early summer, late spring for the drawdown.
for the drawdown?
Yep.
But I thought the drawdown was going to be the last thing that happened.
So putting the drawdown together is the last thing that's gonna happen. When I say the drawdown, that will
The
be the
lowering
actual
the water.
lowering of the water of the lake and cutting a hole in the spillway.
Okay.
Yep.
Joe, is that what they've been doing out there is,
Right now, they're coring the spillway to determine structurally what's there. So that way, when they cut their hole, they wanna know if there's concrete below where the water line's gonna be. So that way they know what they need to shore and how they're gonna shore it, so there's no undermining of the current spillway.
Joe, what would happen if we proceed with the drawdown and then all of a sudden the dredging half of the project is just outrageous?
So the council approved moving forward with the drawdown project regardless of how the lake project went. So if you get to bidding the lake project and council then decides that they don't want to move forward with that, we would move forward with putting the drawdown structure in place and allowing the lake to fill back up.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, we talked about the fact that we've got the settling ponds up north, so when they fill up, we do have to take the water down so that we can take the sediment out of the ponds. Is that a true
Yep,
statement?
and the drawdown to me is a very useful tool for the citizens of Mitchell as far as shoreline work goes, that own property out there, for the city of Mitchell that has to maintain 75% of the shoreline. So I think in general, the drawdown project is a good benefit to the city, regardless of
Hey,
where we
Joe.
end up.
Sorry, Joe. So can we use the drawdown also, like when we have heavy rains, to monitor our level, as in to avoid flooding at Lake Mitchell, as in we know it's coming from the north, obviously what's gone up in Montana or whatever for heavy snows, and know that it's coming this direction where we can get ahead of it, just as the Corps does on the river once in a while, to avoid once in a while besides flooding pier like they had no choice to do?
In the best case scenario, it might give us a day's head start, but the amount of discharge that will be coming out of that pipe is gonna be minimal probably compared to what's coming at us. So maybe not as big of a benefit as what one might think.
How big a pipe was that gonna be again, Joe?
I believe they were talking anywhere from a 36 to a 48.
It's a good sized pipe.
Yep.
so what Marty said makes me think, will we be allowed to do that without getting another permit?
Yeah, should.
The water hits over the spillway, it's the fastest.
Right, I mean,
Uses
the,
over the spillway versus through
right,
the
the
pipe feed
capa,
anyways.
exactly. The capacity of the pipe will be way less than what the water is coming over the spillway when, say, it's a foot higher. It'll be obviously, if the river is extremely flooded, if the Jim River is extremely flooded, we may want to think twice about lowering, because eventually, you know, the Jim River will be within its banks, and then it would be better for us to just charge at that time.
One more clarification. So the bidding that we're talking about in late spring, early summer is for the dredging, not for the drawdown? Or both?
So in 2025, in late spring, early summer, that will be a bid to draw the lake down and cut a hole in the spillway. That's all we're bidding.
So then we have the lake drained, for all intents and purposes, except for where we go.
Yep,
And then when do we bid for the dredge?
that would be in the winter of 2026.
And tell me why we wait.
Because once the water's drawn down, we can go out and we can survey the material that's out there, and that will give us a lot tighter numbers for our bid as far as the actual material that will be removed from the lake. It will allow the contractors to come and look at the lake bottom and see what they're getting into. So it takes out the guesswork. Thank you. Yes. Yep.
And then we would start in 2026, hopefully in the winter when the mud is hard. Because I thought that was always, sorry, I don't know if that's true. I always thought that was one of our goals, was to let them work through the winter because it would be easier for them and we wouldn't have to lose as much time for people to use the lake.
Depending on the contractor's schedule, they could get started right away, or they could wait. To me, this type of a project is going to bring in big contractors from probably regional, at least regional, looking at this just because of the numbers and the dollars that are involved. Yeah, for sure there will be winter work in 26, 27, with wrapping up the project early 28.
Any other, what other goals are we looking for in the next couple of years?
Something that has been weighing on me is, I think that it would behoove the city to look at in the next few years, creating some marketing or media division within the city to better help with communication. I think Mayor Hansen has done a really good job of sharing things on Facebook and social media, but when I look and use our city website at times, it can be very difficult to track and trace data points through there. And then also to create a central place that has a central imaging for things like social media, marketing, and communication pieces for different department heads. I think that would be something to look at if there's space somewhere for that in a capacity of some kind.
Okay. Sure.
A year ago, we were looking at the possibility of the city having to run 2 golf courses, and thankfully that didn't happen. So we still have a private and a public course, which I think is good for Mitchell, and it's also good that we're going to have 2 golf courses. We've started our phases for Lakeview, and it's worked out very well. It looks really nice. And I would like to possibly take the money that we were going to have to spend out on Wild Oak and maybe look at investing into Lakeview for the next phase. And I don't know what exactly that next phase would be. And I know, Dan, you do sit on the board, but at least we can take a look at it. I don't know if you got some thoughts on it or not.
You know, from the phases, I think there was 8 or 9 of them. You know, some of them are an overkill for what Mitchell needs, in my opinion. But the next phase is as far as the beautification, is probably the one that helps the golf course play and look the best. It's you give the drainage at 14 is the hole by the cemetery, so it'd give a new green there, the new look green. It'd have humps to hide the green is actually 30 feet from the cart shed, from the machinery, the work shed. They would mound it to block visions. They would take 5 green and move it, I don't know, I'm just guessing, 30 yards to the east, and that would leave an area to dig a pond for drainage. One thing when they built this in early 70s, drainage must not have been important back then, because they got all these ponds and they didn't drain them to them. And, but anyway, you take all the surface drainage and you go into this pond and have an overflow to go into the lake. And then the biggest need is with the play is that short course we talked about last year. Building that, we got the land that's there. The overplay, the kids' golf is booming. First Tee, even though we have our own program, First Tee is coming into town this year. And so there's going to be 2 junior programs in First Tees. You know, if you're into golf, it's nationally. But anyways, it would give us holes where kids can go out, play without getting pushed. The real intense golfer, they all want more members. Then when they get beginners out there in front of them, they can speed dial the clubhouse. So it gives people to go out and practice on real holes, not the driving range. Kids hate driving ranges. But it would, we got the biggest driving range in the state. They did a great job when they did it. We got the room to grow the game. You know, like Watertown Muni, they got 27 holes. You know, that's never going to happen here, but this would be a phase that would do the course and Mitchell a lot of good. But anyway, the golf course, it'd be huge. You know, that was last year, probably last budget, where they were looking for 1.5 million with 500,000 donated. And they have people that apparently came forward that would donate to the short course, junior golf, basically, and said they would. And then the other, they would get to raise, and the others, if the golf course, you know, you never know your ears, as long as you have a dry ear, you know, you take in more money, but, you know, then the course would pick up the rest to get the 500. But anyway, that's where the golf course is at. I'd really like to see it move forward, and it'd just be for what this last one did, this one will be like 10 times better. This last one was a necessity, where this one would just take care of the drainage. It'd be 2 beautiful greens. It'd really be nice.
I think some of the confusion for me is that when we first saw this plan, there was 1 through 8 phases, and then we kind of renamed phases. So Kevin, which of these have we completed so far? 1 and 2? Oh,
You can see you covered up the numbers.
sorry.
That one's
Okay.
something.
Is this not working?
There's the options are up, so you just have to hit the settings button.
Okay. So phase 1 and 2 are done, correct? You said, Kevin? That doesn't work.
Okay.
You're gonna have to use the microphone behind you, or
2, with the exception of,
come up here, or Justin, yeah.
Thought the hand one was.
Musical chairs.
Yes.
In Phase 2, holes 11 and 12 were not able to be completed. We really had an alternate Phase 2.
Which on here?
I think our council rep could better explain the alternates that happened in place of holes 11 and 12 in terms of which holes. Extended tee boxes on, help me Dan, was it 15?
Correct. What happened was, hole 12 is still gonna be abandoned. We're using it now. Oops.
Yeah.
We're using it now until to hole 14's the new par 3. So until that one gets used, so we're still got 18 holes. Hole 11's where we ran into the problem with the
Yeah.
mounds.
If you were going to cross off which one of these were done, which would you cross off?
1 and half of 2.
Okay. And Dan, which one were you referring to? Is it this one, phase 8?
Because of what happened on hole 11, they did the mounding and rebuilt of the sand traps.
Oh, okay.
It was a compromise with the construction company, or they're gonna pull out. And the architect approved dollar for dollar, as good as we could get. And hole 3 is the one I'm talking about with the short course. You can.
This one?
Yeah, see, 7 and 8 are, I don't know if you want to be a country club, you know, I mean, it's really a nice feature. It makes it, but it makes you a special course. I don't know how to say it correctly. But so what they did at the short course was, yeah, that's got the 3-hole practice range. So when they took this and the people came forward, so that was brought up into the phase 3.
Okay.
And what I had heard from the golf board is that the putting, the driving range with the synthetic turf and the targets out there were kind of a big deal.
Targets, yes. We kind of got some targets, kind of farmerish made, don't take that the wrong way. Yeah, and then just improve them. Synthetic turf is, some like it, some don't.
So was this put together by the architect?
Yeah, this was the original master plan that
Right.
the council reviewed, as well as the Park and Rec Board. So I've always tried to check back at where we're at on
Right,
this
and-
original master plan.
And obviously, we made good decisions on keeping things moving and still utilizing the funds and done some remarkable things out there already. Would it be a possibility if we could, even if it's an estimate on the cost, start now with a new phase
Yeah.
report like this that the golf board can look at and say, now this would be our priorities and this would be somewhat of an estimated cost?
That would be helpful.
It's gonna cost you.
Well,
Unless,
I'm not
yeah.
saying re-engage, the architect, because we kind of got,
Part 4 is the part that got done, the bunker renovation, that was a trade out on hole 11.
Oh, so part of
So,
this.
So
yeah.
part 4 is kind of done too?
What's that?
Part 4 completely done?
No. No.
Yeah, I think we could probably,
Actually, the forward tees was part of the trade-off too, so a lot done. New tee and 12 did not get done,
So part of 2 and part of 4 is done.
2/3 of it. And actually, the minor part is the new tees on hole 12, so.
and, now that we had the state come forward and say, now keep in mind, guys, that this section right here, you cannot do anything with, and that kind of realigned a little bit what we were gonna do there, which we worked around and we're fine. But now that we know all of that information, that's where I'm just saying, even if you get close to estimates, but as you're talking, Dan, the 3-hole or the executive course, I think that would just go over very well. I really like that. And I see that it was originally under phase 7, but now, would we think that we'd want to move that up?
7.
And that's where I kind of like to see, even just to redo, cross off what you've
I'm sure
done.
Jason can do that, it's just estimates of
Okay,
the cost.
yeah, that'd be perfect.
Yeah, I'll meet with him and.
Take it to the board.
Yep,
Yeah, cross off the ones we've done
yep.
and then put in the ones, the wish list.
And as more of a benefit to that new trail that's going to go around the south and west side of the cemetery expansion, that trail system will better feed that whole neighborhood to go out to the golf course. And that could be kids.
Of the amount shown up there, how much are coming out of the enterprise fund, the golf course enterprise fund, and how much will they come to council and say, we'd like a certain amount?
You've been in the golf business, so like I said, it warms up and then, last year we had a wet spring and we had an amazing July on. So come the middle of June, I'll be able to tell you where we're gonna be at this year. You can almost guess just what type of spring you have.
So Dan,
You don't know. So
Before
you-
budget. It's impossible on the golf course.
earlier this year, the Park and Rec Department did request to designate $250,000 towards those future projects as well.
Yeah, my only point is that's a long way from 3 million.
Yep, and the city did contribute, I can pull it up, I think it was 660 2 years ago.
Or more, isn't it closer to 70?
It might have been.
Or something like that.
And then also, what Tim just kind of reminded me of is, is the donations. The reason they're donating is for the short course, not for the renovations, but is for the short course because it's an additional to the golf course. And there's some people, got grandkids that just want to see the golf course get better and so that's where they're at on that.
Right, that 250 was supposed to go toward the next projected combined $1.5 million in improvements. Not the entire.
You had mentioned 500,000, is that,
The 500,000 is donations with the golf course. If they run short, use, of course, we tapped into 75,000 of that, but I better throw that in there. But
He's including the 250 from the golf funds
Yeah.
and the 250 donation from private
oh,
individuals.
okay.
Yep.
So you're pretty confident at this point, all 500 is still on the table?
no. I'm confident that they're gonna raise money and the golf course will make sure it's up to 500,000.
Okay.
So does that 500,000 include the 250 he has designated?
Yeah, the 250, yeah, the 500,000, the 250 is what they said they thought they could raise, or think they could raise more, and the 500 is between Lakeview and
Oh, okay, so
the
we're talking
donations.
250 in donations plus the cash contribution from the
Yeah,
fund.
250 each.
Gotcha.
And they will raise as much as they can up to 500.
Yeah.
So from the the November 25th work session, I just had this here from last notes, it says, there's two phases of the golf course and clarified that there are 500,000 of private donation committed towards a $1.6 million project. That's what,
But it's not, right? You're saying it's 250,000 in donation and 250 from the golf fund?
Yes.
Yeah. I had that wrong at the last one too, so.
oh, okay.
'Cause that's,
These are your notes, so.
yeah,
As long as I'm still on the table, you know, also on the park board, the two things that we didn't do, you know, that really need to get done this year, as everybody knows, is one, the tennis courts, and two, the roof on the hockey. So I'm hoping they get it in the budget.
the
And
what sports?
the hockey roof,
What was the one before that?
Tennis courts.
courts.
Okay, sorry.
And the baseball field perimeter fence. I don't know, maybe you had a little bit of estimate, I have no idea. The perimeter fence is, I think, original. It was built in 74 or 76.
I think 72, isn't it?
A long time ago. And
A long time ago. right?
it's beat up, it's dangerous, real dangerous, actually. I took Marty out there when he was on the park board, that was a couple years ago. There's tin that's this up this high on the home run fence if somebody jumps up. Anyway, it's time for beautification, but I'd like to see that done if we, you know, in the near future.
Were you thinking all wood on that, Dan? I had heard at one point.
It's all the same, yeah. Have not talked with the park board or the baseball board about it unless they'd want to do something different with the home run fence, you know, if they want to get away from the tin wood. If that's original, there's zero maintenance in whatever that years it is, 50. So wooden home run fence, you got maintenance. You got to stain it, you got to keep it up, broken boards, wood took it down. It's nice, traditional. And I have not talked to the baseball board about what they would want on the home run fence.
Dan, I remember 1972.
So do I.
I remember it.
So you bring up a good point there, Dan, is we've got two projects that we're looking at for Park and Rec, and both of them are being utilized by associations, tennis association and baseball association. So it would definitely make some sense to get their input and see if they have the ability to raise part of the funds for these projects. I think we've talked about that too.
The tennis association, I believe, is meeting this Thursday.
Good, and then the school has
They've
helped
been
in the
in
past too.
conversation, yes.
Perfect.
With Kevin, too, has been involved in the conversations.
Perfect, yep, good.
Yeah, so like the mayor said, that note that he's referring to from our last work session, I made that note, but again, so the 500,000 is not all private donations. It's 250 in private and 250 from the golf fund. And I'll correct that too.
Well, I'll bring up the Corn Palace, because I think being as we got, just, Shimmer doing the design on it, I think we need to keep, definitely the back room needs to get fixed up, because it's in desperate need of some help, and so is the heating and cooling, and we got the chairs, which is a good thing, and if we're going to get one thing, we might as well just keep moving forward, because it is our number one attraction for the city of Mitchell, and it brings a ton of people to town.
So Kevin, can you maybe just bring us up to date on kind of where the architect shimmer is at? I know you guys are meeting about every other week. Did they,
I think we're meeting next Wednesday, aren't we? I think it's next Wednesday. Yeah, the 9th, yeah, we're meeting, we had a meeting 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago. We gave him a bunch of direction on what, we want him to do for the money we gave him, and he said he's gonna get to work in the next couple of weeks and come back with some plans, and, and then we go through it again and say, we want this, we don't want that, and we're still looking for a major donor too, to help out. Hopefully that comes through. But we'll know more, I think it's the 9th. A week from Wednesday, we'll have a lot more information.
you're thinking on the 9th, then you're gonna be putting a few finishing touches on as the committee, and then when do you anticipate then bringing it public and in front of everybody?
I don't know if we'll be putting finishing touches on it, but we'll be giving a
Putting
lot
more?
of, well, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll be giving a lot of input on what he's gonna, he didn't have a lot more to show us than he showed us at the council that time, but he was gonna spend the next 2-3 weeks, he said, working hard. I know he was here last week, because he called me and told me that he was underneath the stage, and underneath here, and underneath there, and upstairs, and all over the place, so he's taking pictures, and so he could put together the plan, one of the 2 plans that we showed him. I think he's to come back with 2 plans, and we're gonna look at them and see what we think we can do and what we can't do. So hopefully, within the next couple of weeks, we'll have a lot more information on that.
I don't know, I read something in the paper. Are we considering farming out doing the murals?
I hope so.
I don't think it's a bad idea. I'm just curious. I mean, is that something the board's been discussing?
So the Corn Palace Board, Corn Palace staff has discussed preliminary conversations about what it would look like to have RFP put out for contracting just the murals themselves to be installed by a contractor in the fall. With the hope being that if we had somebody that had a dedicated staff that could come in and spend a week or 2 in doing it, that they would be able to do those things much more efficiently than what our current staffing has allowed.
So it would look like an advertisement for professional services to receive bids from a contracting company of some sort to come up and hang the murals as directed by the city with the design of the murals provided by DW.
Have we got our new designs yet for next year, or haven't they brought them to us?
We're playing musical chairs up here.
We have seen and made some corrections on the existing murals that they presented to us. We expect them around the 1st of May to be finalized and approved by the Corn Palace Board.
You might as well say this. I don't think they've announced
I-
it
yeah.
publicly yet.
No, it'd be nice to get that farmed out, because they just finished them last week, and it's kind of embarrassing. It's end of March and you're just finishing the murals on the Corn Palace.
And I
Back in
think.
the old days, they were done in September.
And what we talked about still was the rye portion would still be utilizing local high school kids, and that's ready first. We still would have that part of the tradition, and part of the design would be done, but it would essentially be then the actual corn portion that would be within each mural that we would be looking at, so that they could come with their equipment, their lifts. And Jeff has started to prepare here's the nails that we're using, here's, that list of things that they would have to, unless we would talk through something that maybe they think is better that we haven't thought of, but it would go up essentially the same. We would handle the artwork and the paint by number portion, so we would put the tie-back or the tar paper, whatever, on the actual mural itself, so they would really just get into town and shoot nails.
The mayor's had staff putting together, all the details that we needed for that, and I can't remember what you gave us for timeline, Mayor, of when you wanted that done?
Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
I
I
was
was,
gonna say the end of November.
And it's not their fault they didn't get it done, and with 4 or 5 people, it takes forever to,
yeah.
I mean, they gotta cut it, and then they gotta go nail it, and then they gotta cut more and go nail it, I mean,
And the murals are bigger than they used to be.
yeah.
And I would also say, without giving away the theme, it will be very time sensitive that we replace it in a timely fashion.
Yeah.
To make the theme make sense for what we're looking at for 2026.
In wintertime, and as we get behind, we're cutting those, and then they have to be hydrated again in order
Yeah, they gotta
to
soak
go
them
up. And that takes a day or two just to get everything soaked and ready to go back up on the wall.
We, a few years ago, put out an RFP for a corn grower. How long is that contract, and do we anticipate that we will do that again, or are we just gonna stay with
We
this guy?
just renewed his contract.
Yeah.
It's not that long ago.
3 years, I think it's
Yeah.
3 years and we just signed it this year.
Yeah, so we just renewed his contract.
Right before Doug left.
Correct.
What else do we need to talk about for the near future?
At our last work session, we started the process for rental inspections. Can someone give us an update on the timeline for bringing that back to city council?
I don't know if I have a timeline for you to see that here at city council. I don't know if my mic is working. Gonna have to swallow this thing for it to work. That process is still ongoing. We have a recent updated draft that the city staff has worked and kind of polished. The next step that we have is to go back and do a larger group meeting with kind of those community stakeholders like we did once before. Now they'll have a draft to go through and review. So the idea would be to go through that process, see what comes out of that session, see what other changes they might have or suggestions. Do one more, pass through on cleaning that stuff up, and then we could start looking at bringing it to planning commission and council from there. So that's kind of where we're at. Unfortunately, I don't have a timetable to attach to any of that.
I know another one we talked about was drainage, because everybody always complains a lot about drainage. We're gonna do the one 13th in Wisconsin, I believe. Is there, after that one gets done, is there another plan for, I get a lot of complaints for over by the jail area, yeah.
And in my neighborhood, that's.
We don't care about your, no.
Oh, yeah?
Just kidding.
Oh, yeah?
We are working towards a plan to help the Williams and Anderson area.
Yeah.
If that, we're working on looking at some different properties that we could put a detention pond that would alleviate that area. If we're not able to acquire that property, we're probably looking at a $20 million project to fix that area.
That's probably one of the worst ones in town, isn't it, over there?
It's, as far as standing water, that's where the water stands the longest. There's probably 1 or 2 homes that are affected when we get a lot of water. We have addressed the Sanborn areas better. We've done some improvements in the Clockworks area and the Patzer Woodworking area. We did have in the Northwest Drainage Study, there are some additional intersections that we could fix, taking water to the west with detention ponds. There are some additional studies that need to be done with the interior corridor of the city. That we'll need to hire an engineering firm to study, to look at pipe sizing and what we need to do. The 7th and Lawler intersection has flooding. There's areas in like the East Hanson that experience some flooding. So we probably do need to look at budgeting some money and actually modeling those areas and see what we can do to alleviate some of those areas. But the higher prone areas, I feel like in the past 5 years, we've addressed a few of those, and we're continuing to work at addressing the bigger problems area and moving down the list.
And then I have to say my broken record. We used to have a fee that was established as part of the wastewater fund that funded these projects, and we have not had that since we did the Sanborn project. So part of the fee review that we did with water and sewer was looking at starting to build in that fee into our wastewater fund again, so that we can start to plan for these projects moving forward. the last several years, we've had to pay for all of them out of general fund, where in previous years, we had an established fee to help with those. Just my standard comment, I guess, every time we talk about drainage. We need to have a funding source tied to this. We can't expect general fund to cover that entire cost.
That and the other thing I'd like to mention is our design standards aren't to accommodate these really large rainfalls that we've received. As you know, the water did recede faster, but there were still some businesses and properties that were affected. And there are some areas that just are in a bowl. And depending how much rain we get and how hard it does rain, it doesn't matter how big a pipe you put or the amount of inlets you put in there, there is a possibility that flooding still will occur after these improvements are done. I just always put that caveat with storm drainage, because it is all weather dependent and God related.
But, I mean, we did now have the presentation on each of those study areas that were completed. We need to have almost like a facility plan like we did for water and wastewater that says in what order we're gonna tackle these and what is the revenue stream that we've identified to help fund those projects as we move forward.
What else do we need to talk about?
Therein lies our 10-year plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're funny, yeah.
I mean, have we made a dent on our wastewater facility plan or water facility plan yet?
We still have a lot of water and sewer to replace, being clay sanitary sewer and cast iron water main. We probably hundreds of millions is not an understatement. And we're gradually chipping away as we're moving forward.
I think we have to look at that like we look at parks. We just keep it on a steady, we're just gonna keep going. And then when we finish it, by the time we finish it all, it'll be time to start back at the beginning, so.
Obviously, a couple things that I have, as we've always been talking about for several years. Obviously, tonight we toured a facility for a possible future of City Hall and other entities in our community. I want to make sure we don't lose sight of a future City Hall of some sort. Obviously, the upcoming thought of maybe the Corn Palace renovation, if the support is there from the public, obviously that might be the domino effect for City Hall, but I want to make sure we don't lose sight of it. I think we all know that something has to happen at some point in time, and like I said, we've been sitting here, a few of us, Smith, for 18 years plus, and it's been, just kept on the burner and then on the back burner, and the burner, back burner, and at some point in time, it's got to come to the fruition of taking place and actually happen. But maybe, like I said, the next step is what the Corn Palace option might be coming up and then going from there. But, so I want to make sure we keep that on the front plate pretty aggressively. The other thing that we got brought up a while back, and I don't know how much of a work session it is, but more of, I just want to make sure we can get it on the agenda. Obviously, we're on off election year, and I think we really need to get something put together, Justin, with our possible elections coming up with staggered rotation, so we can have an election every year. I think on how it's currently at is not a good layout, because at one term, you could literally lose 4 council members and the mayor. And obviously, a lot of insight, a lot of thoughts, a lot of knowledge could leave all in 1 year. And I don't think that's good for the community, for that to happen. I think it'd be better if we can try to figure out some kind of rotation. Now, I know we brought it back at one time and we had 5 or 6 options, and there was some in there I think we can really take a look at and say that just ain't gonna work, as in eliminate it down to maybe 2 or 3 that we can bring back to the council and for us to sort of bring up and then have sort of the public input that might get put into place. But I really think that we need to get that in place before next year's election on a staggered rotation of some sort, because that next year's election would be the ones that might be only running for a 2-year term or a 4-year term or whatever it may be. But I'd love to see something in place for us to vote in and get an ordinance change and get on the docket for next election, next June's elections.
I agree, Marty. Literally this last election, we could have had, we have a new mayor. We could have been 4 people sitting here. We had 5 out of the 9 people could have been brand new. And that put shivers down these guys' spine out here, because that would be quite a feat to try to bring everybody up to speed. And so I really like, Mayor, you brought up a few options. I just think it's time that we really have some good, serious discussion about it, and then let's get it to a point where 1 year, eventually it's gonna be 1 year, we got 4 council members, next year's the next 4 council members, and then the next year's the mayor. That's a possibility. Because I don't think you can stagger any other way, because you can't have 2 people in a ward run for 1 election. But maybe there's others out there. Justin, why don't you maybe put some thought to it too, and then you can come back. And I know we talked about mayor either being, initially 4 years or 2 years or something to get out of the rotation.
I don't have the options for you off the top of my head here tonight, but I know that's something that, the mayor and the rest of the staff, that I can talk to them about, and we can come back with maybe an option for discussion, and then if council doesn't like that, we can look at other options too.
Right. I think if we can just try to bring back some, once again, some suitable options. I mean, there was quite a bit on your list last time, but I think there's a few of them in my mind that was like, that just doesn't make kind of sense, so we can minimize a direction to go, the less we got to sort of consider, that makes sense for, like we said, the city, the staff, and everybody involved, for the city-wise. It just, I think if we can get you guys down, maybe 2 or 3 different options that we can discuss, and then let's put the one on the forefront and see if we can get approval to make some changes.
Yeah, I remember, when you're looking at staying at 3-year terms, which is what we have now for everybody, that is pretty limiting at the different options that you can do. But if you're going to consider moving up to like a 4-year term for the positions, that gives you a lot more flexibility as to how you can stagger which seats are up at which time and that kind of thing. So.
I got a quick question for Dan, polarized. If this election passes in Davidson and Hanson County, we're probably gonna have to purchase, are we gonna have to purchase more ambulances, or I'm just curious on what you will need if that happens? Because it's only a couple weeks away.
Yeah, it's 3 weeks.
You're counting up.
3 weeks and 1 day. Yeah, and 6 hours, yeah. It is something that we'll have to discuss, we currently have 4 ambulances right now, and there are times that all 4 are out at the same time. But yeah, it is certainly something that if we can get this through, it will be something in the future that we'll have to discuss, doing a 5th ambulance probably.
Because we'll have budgeting coming up pretty soon, so that way, we'll know by then if we need to put some money, I'm just curious if we'll need to put something away for that, or.
Yep, right.
I mean, it's pretty cheap, 600,000?
I had a guy call me
They're
the
not
other
very
day.
cheap.
It's a reasonable
They're not very cheap.
minivan, yeah.
So we just remounted Medic 3, and when we received that, I asked them, what would it be brand new instead of a remount, and at that time it was 350,000. So I would imagine in the next year or 2, you're gonna be looking at 400. Yeah, and that, I mean, that's for one of the smaller ones that we have as well, so.
And Dan, if this vote passes.
Say when it passes.
When it passes, we're hoping that happens. How much income would we receive from these counties that are currently being served, but now they would help pay for?
Yep, so basically, it's about a $700,000 deal to get 6 more employees. It's about $113,000 per paramedic that Michelle had figured for next year. That doesn't include meal allowance, overtime, any of that sort of stuff.
No, my question is, what would these counties be giving the city to help offset?
700,000 covering the cost of those 6 staff.
Oh, I thought he said 700,000 for paramedics.
Yep.
Yep, that's what the cost would be for. Yep, so it would be a total of about 700,000 within the entire district.
So the districts would be covering the cost of those 6 additional staff. They'd be requesting the 700,000 to cover the cost of those 6 additional staff.
Would kind of be a wash, John, is what they're saying.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Oh, yeah, you're not gonna come out ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Whole pay for what we would have.
yeah.
But that won't cover any additional ambulance costs?
No, no. Just to get all it is we have 3 shifts, and so all that is just to get 2 more per shift, which is 1 extra ambulance crew per shift.
It has nothing to do with paying the bills. It's just to get the people so that we can continue to respond.
Because
I mean,
without it, we won't be able to probably.
Obviously, that's,
Right.
Dan, how much are we self-supporting now? What percent?
Well, I mean, we run, the predicted shortfall is $974,000
And
for this
percentage?
year.
We collect about, isn't it 40% of what you bill out?
Oh, what we bill out, is that what you mean? Yeah, so
Yeah.
our gross billing for last year was 1.74 million, and within that period of that billing was 658,000 in revenue. So we lose about 62.5% every time
What would
we
happen to that
leave.
percentage taking on this new if it passed?
It's the same thing.
It's gonna be the same
It's
thing,
the
and part
same
of that
thing.
is that we bill out the full cost to operate,
Yeah.
but we're only receiving back whatever Medicaid, Medicare, or insurance
Right.
will pay on that cost. And really, they're not looking at taking on additional work, they just need support for doing the work that we're already doing
Right.
now.
Yeah.
So we're
If
not
you have more
leaving.
people, you should have more calls, correct? Or am I looking at it wrong?
The
No,
proposed 6 people are to cover our existing calls,
Right.
not to add
Yeah.
more calls.
Yeah, it's just because our station in the city is being left uncovered because of the amount of calls. So, yeah, it is nothing about taking more calls. We've had some people, well, I mean, that's not, so this would be including the eastern third of Hanson County, which we used to cover, and we didn't have enough staffing to cover and take those people to Sioux Falls. So Salem had started to come over and cover that. So this would take that additional eastern third, which probably on average is about, I don't know, 2.5 calls per month, otherwise it's just the fact that the station is being left empty and the city is being left unprotected. And I mean, I don't know how much you want to get into it tonight or not, but, we have to, if we are licensed, Stephanie learned this, that if whatever we're licensed at, the administrative rules say 90% of your calls, you have to respond to it within 15 minutes. It also says you must respond within 20 minutes of your licensed area. And I can tell you last year, due to multiple calls, an in-town resident waited 34 minutes for an ambulance. And to me, that's unacceptable.
So-
That's the position we're in.
So this is great information, and I actually reached out to Dan and asked if he would be willing to do a presentation at the next council meeting. And it basically kind of an abbreviation of what they're doing, of going around to the other towns that are being proposed to come into the district. So him and Amy Storm are gonna come in at the next meeting, and Stephanie's probably gonna have some solid numbers for us to look at. But bottom line is we just cannot continue the way that we are right now and be able to service our people in town without the possibility of showing up a half hour late with somebody 2 blocks from the firehouse. So this is a very good approach. It's being received very well, but I just thought maybe it'd be important to kind of hear what they're out there, so if somebody does get a hold of us, at least we know what is being proposed and what's being, kind of said at the meetings and what questions. And it's basically just gonna be a discussion with us. So we don't have to bring, whatever meetings you're having out there in discussion. This is basically for our knowledge itself. So Dan has agreed and Amy has agreed. I've talked to both of them, and they're gonna come in and give the presentation and basically get right down to exactly what is being proposed.
Monday night.
Yes. Yep, Monday night.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we'll just ask more questions on the next meeting. Thank you.
Yep.
Justin, I got one for you. We talked about it kind of in the past, and at some point, can you look back on the lease that we did with the old Kelly property that we bought with the current farmers that we have in place? Obviously, it was a long-term lease, but is there a possibility of selling that land And if there is, I'd like to have it brought before council so we can discuss it.
Yeah, I don't recall.
I'm catching
how
you
much
right
was-
off guard, I forgot to.
This one's not too bad, so.
Okay.
I don't recall in there how much would be left on those leases, but if the council wanted to sell that property, you certainly could. The only issue with it at this point is that whoever you're selling it
The lease will
to
follow it.
would have to assume that.
Yeah, which is
lease.
fine.
Yep.
Or you'd
Yep.
buy the lease out probably, wouldn't you? You could?
That would be something they'd have to negotiate with the tenant.
Oh, I
Yeah.
remember it was 10 years.
That's what I was
That's what
thinking,
I
it was
remember.
10, and so we're on the north side of that.
That could be, and yeah, it was probably, what, that was right around COVID, right? So 19?
Oh, wow.
Stephanie, do you have those rates?
Oh, don't bring those up.
What?
Don't bring the rates up.
No, I'm looking at the,
And if I'm the only one, that's fine, but are you guys interested in taking a peek at it?
Now is the time.
Okay, I agree with you, Mike.
oh, right here. 2019, yep. Is when we purchased it.
And you think there was-
rates, what are we receiving from the?
Oh, that? Sorry, I was on the other, I can't pull up Minco on this.
And it is not the best land.
It's
We
low.
looked at
I
the
can tell you
ratings,
that.
and the ratings weren't tremendous, but they are still
Land
ag
prices
land in
are,
Davidson
land
County.
prices are high though.
I agree with you. That's the reason I bring it up, is I would love to take that money and just roll it right back into the watershed.
So I guess I'm not sure how council wants to move forward on that, because if you're looking to actually go and go through a sales process, next thing to do would be to bring it back with what area are we gonna sell and surplus that, and then we decide whether it's gonna be auctioned or listed with a realtor, or how we go about that.
Or bid it, or bid's always good.
I have the revenue amount, 15,571 annually.
How many acres?
I'm
curious about the acres.
All I know is the
Just because
revenue,
that's what everybody
sorry.
I think it's 300 and some acres.
What?
I think it goes up to 2030.
Oh,
It's about, isn't it about 300 and some acres, Joe? It's about 300 and some acres, I think, isn't it? Just ball.
Tillable was like 180. That's what my memory, no, that's.
we will get that lease document and we'll send it out so
Yeah.
everyone can review it.
How
Do that.
about the second meeting in April? Would that be enough time, Justin, to kind of at least bring us, at least
Yeah, I mean, I can. get you-
information?
I can
that-
get you the information on the lease tomorrow. I mean, that won't be a problem. You know, the information on what area you guys want to sell and that kind of stuff. We can talk about that internally as to what makes sense. and,
Mhm.
You know, maybe bring that back for discussion.
Come back with a
or something.
recommendation?
So, I don't think that second meeting in April, that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. We're okay?
Yep.
If we're in the selling mood, I have a question for Kevin. On the pontoon,
Sell it.
how often have we rented that?
Not at all.
Oh.
Sell it.
Was it available for a grant
It was
master?
available for rent, but on a limited extent based upon the staffing that we had last year, because as the people were hired this spring, we hired.
Oh, you need to go, I'm sorry, we're on.
The question was regarding the pontoon and how much it was rented last year. None. We had a limited availability of it due to it needed to be underneath a full-time staff person because the seasonal caretakers out there or the campground hosts, it was not in their job description. And they said, no, we're not going to do this. We didn't have very many options as far as campground hosts last year. This year, the campground hosts have been hired. They understand that it is in their job description. I discussed with Tim earlier this week, Councilmember Tim, excuse me, in terms of what we're willing to do. We can go all the way from right after sunrise until a half hour before sunset. We'd like to have it in for inspections, both in front of the person who rented and the staff person who's there at night, just to check in terms of damages, and we can go Monday through Sunday now. And we also last year wanted to go in 4-hour increments. Cedar Shores went to if you rent on a weekend, you have to go to a full day, but they've gone to hourly available during the week. I think we can do that same thing. $75 an hour during the week, but we're still looking at that 4-hour block on the weekends.
I guess I would say
Minimal.
then, let's look at it at the end of the season and see if it's worth even having it.
Yeah, with those, and I'm with Mike, with those changes, I'm willing to give it another year. Obviously, we got the pontoon, it's there, we got limited liability that we have to put on it, but I agree, it's gotta be a revenue maker or some type of income, so I'm willing with those changes. I guess myself is willing to take a look at it to see what happens this summer, and I appreciate you guys making some changes, because that's exactly right, it need to be done, because zero is not the answer, so hopefully we can get some rental income from it and make sense, because most lakes that you do go to, they all have some type of rental capabilities on all of them. And I don't know, so it's always a good plus no matter where you go in any communities that you go. Obviously, you can't really compare it to Okoboji because we know what happens down there, but other lakes around our state, you go to, there's rental capabilities. So I'm glad we have one, just that we know this last year didn't get utilized, so hopefully this year's changes, but what you're implementing will make that happen. So,
My understanding back before they purchased it, they were looking at a larger boat to be able to put out buoys and dock sections and things like that as far as the city-operated things. Some creative minds got together and said, why don't we get something that we can also rent out? So it is being used. In fact, the mayor was involved last year in terms of hauling some things off the lake after the flooding, branches and logs and things, and towing them back to shore. So it can get used for other utilitarian uses, but yes, being able to rent it will be handy too.
Because in a couple of years, we won't be able to use it at all when there's no water in the lake.
Right.
We won't be renting it to anybody.
But one of the things, Kevin, that I think is so key, and I think you and I talked about this before, or at least I remember mentioning it, is that we've got to find a way to market that. We've got to have a way to let people know that it's available. Because I think there are people within our community, outside of the people that come to stay at the campground, I think there are people in the community that would use it.
Agreed.
But we haven't really made that something that was well-known. I mean, when I mention it to people, they go, what? I had no idea. So I think we just need to make sure that we find a way to make sure that people are aware.
And it was my understanding they were intentionally not releasing a lot of information, because weren't you also waiting for a dock that you
Yes,
purchased last
yes,
year as
the-
well? So,
The dock and the lift weren't available till
Right.
mid-season last year.
so to judge, I think the use by the last couple of years would be unfair, because they haven't even put it out there for people to use.
They haven't been able to.
Right.
Right.
I do have good news. They will rent it at least 3 times this year. Because the reason that me and Kevin talked about it is because me and some friends are planning on renting it out, because I think it is a great asset. I do think at the end of this season, though, it might be good for us to look at surplusing that particular pontoon, because the lake may not be usable going forward as we dredge the lake for 3 or 4 years. So
And I
that
know
might
it-
be something.
I'm sorry. Another organization across the street is already planning a summer event, and it has to do with newcomers, where they've also discussed renting it one evening, so that'll be at least 4 rentals.
4 rentals, that's better than.
We got about 10 minutes left, and I talked to Stephanie earlier today, and she's got budgeting coming up here shortly. And she wanted to know what some of the priorities we thought next year would be for.
Yeah, I
Her
just
to
want
put
to
in the
make sure
budget.
if council has something that you're expecting to see, that you've discussed that, so we know going into the budget.
Did we,
And I'm not overlooking something that you're anticipating.
did we end up identifying some money for the architect to look at the ice arena roof? Did we end
Yes,
up?
that's in
we
the
did.
supplemental budget
That
this
is
year.
it. Okay, thank you. The other thing that I think and I know you guys are continuing to work on it, I know that. The shooting range, really would be nice to come up with some type of a plan for that too. So, I don't know, Mayor, if you've got any more comments on that.
I think we could probably have a gun range pretty quick. We have a site identified, I have a site identified that the city already owns, and we have a donor, and I think we just come together as people and decide that it's a good spot, but
We
I
don't
think
want to lose it.
Joe's a little worried, I think, from the last time. I was a little excited, but we talk about it very frequently, but,
We don't want to lose that donor money.
no, I just talked to him the other day too. Showed him a mower. He's, it's just, there's different groups that want different things, and some people want a lot, which is probably, in my opinion, out of reach, and then there's things we could probably achieve in absolutely no time within the next few months, and we just gotta all come together on a simple idea that would work for most people without going too far overboard.
I'm gonna talk about something that the hotelers have kind of requested, that we consider an indoor sporting facility, I guess,
An indoor what?
indoor sporting facility, to bring people into the community in the slower months. So fills their hotel rooms. There, I think that, and someone can definitely correct me if I'm wrong, they've committed to giving a certain percentage of their intake towards the facility. I think it's an awesome idea. A couple different locations that I'm not going to say them located. I think that at some point we need to get some sort of a steering committee together and say, yes, we want to do it. Yes, we want to set aside how many millions of dollars to start the funding source to do it, because it is a large undertaking. But I feel like it's something we could really do for the people of our community. And, you know, I can remember a gentleman coming up to the podium saying he couldn't recruit people because the lake was dirty for his job. This will do that. An indoor sporting facility will do that, and it's doing something for our community, and it will bring people to town on weekends and for tournaments and whatnot. We know the soccer, you know, and Tim, you asked me what I didn't like about the corners. This is kind of what I didn't like about it, is it offers more with the turf for soccer and baseball and things like that. And I just think that they're spot on. And, you know, they put that money in there for us to help them and them to help us to do this. And I think it would be a really good thing for our community to help recruit more employers and more employees.
I think it's something that would get used by young, and everybody would use it. It doesn't matter age, I think.
It is a lot of money. It is an enormous amount of money.
How much is it?
I think they had said in the papers over 40 million. I don't know what I've heard 100,000 square feet.
Different sizes, obviously.
Yeah.
So-
And you know, I envisioned it like a mini Sanford. We don't, you know, in Jordan's little State of the City address, you know, we don't want to necessarily be like these other communities. We want to set ourselves apart a little bit. And this, I think, will set us apart, you know, and we have such a huge draw from, you know, the Corsica, Armour, Stickney, Plankington, Weston Springs, Woonsocket areas, that I think those kids will get more involved in the community activities, club sports and things in our community. And who knows, maybe they'll decide to move here.
Yeah, the discussion at the bid 4 was it bid 4 or bid 3? Anyway, one of those bid 4s. Okay, bid 4 was they did a survey, Jerry Thompson did a survey, and they asked what they want to do with the money, and almost all of them said they do not want to put any of their money to current facility repairs and maintenance, but I want to say 80% of them said they would like to put between 20 and 40% of the bid 4 money towards a new indoor facility, mostly used from January to March, whenever that shoulder season is. And I think they collect over 300,000, and if they want to dedicate 30,000 a year, that's what their board decides to do with their money that they collect. That's $100,000 a year. So to me, that seems like a clear direction to at least explore that option.
It's guaranteed money.
And we kind of have to do what they are asked for, because if they don't like what we do, then they can dissolve their own board. So, I mean, to me, that seems very important.
If you're interested in viewing those survey results, it is listed on the agenda from the March meeting for the bid 4 board, like the mayor said, what they discussed during that meeting.
Yeah, can you scroll back up to the top? Okay, right, no, right.
sorry, I went too
Question number
fast.
1, I'm sorry, question number 1. New capital projects that would help build facilities to attract people, and then the other one is direct marketing. So they basically want to give people money directly to bring sporting events, and then they also want to do sporting events.
Which we're currently doing, basically.
Yes, yep.
Yeah, which is good.
Yep, so they like that idea, and then the other top percentage is towards a new facility. And then question number 3 says how much money, and you can see it's right, majority, 7 out of 9 said between 20 and 40%, so I just averaged at 30, which I think is a fair average. And then when I asked the hotelers, they said, yes, we want another facility, because in the summer we don't need it, in the fall we don't need it, in the spring we need.
They even gave an example, it was from.
Kearney, Nebraska. They said, we don't want anything fancy. It doesn't need to look fancy. We just need people to come here during the cold months.
The biggest thing with it is my experience of looking some of these facilities for other reasons, I'll say, it's a massive wide open building is what it is. You know, so it's a lot of square footage. Your costs are expensive because it's just as expensive. But I do think now is the time because we've seen it here with bidding stuff. And Joe had just mentioned how it's, you know, we're back to before COVID. And I just think that it's now is the time to really start moving the needle for Mitchell. I mean, we've got a little momentum. Let's keep it going.
We got 3 minutes left. Anybody, what else does anybody want to talk about? I had somebody reach out to me. When we do the budget, remember we used to have 2 council people in there with you guys? I had people bring that back that we should probably have a couple council people being, we approve the budget.
For what?
To go over the budget meet.
The only time, at least since I've been here in 2014, that council were involved was to review subsidies. And we didn't do that last year because the subsidy recommendations.
I think when Mayor Everson, we did.
No, it's always been me and the mayor meeting with department heads because it's the mayor's presentation to council to start. The only time we had council involved was during subsidies. And like I said, we stopped doing that just because there was recommendations and then council wanted to discuss them all anyways. So, you know, if you're looking at state law and city code, really it's the mayor's budget to present to council to start. So that's how the
Okay.
process starts.
All right, it's just something that was brought up to me, so
I did like how the subsidy process worked this last year. I thought that was really good. It was efficient, and everyone got their point across and was able to come in and say the things that they needed to and answer questions.
It was nice for me to not have to duplicate the process, so I appreciated it.
These meetings are very helpful as far as I'm concerned, and thank you guys for coming and taking an extra night out, and it's, I remember back in 2014, we had a meeting like this, and we said we're out of water, and it only took 12 years to solve it.
That's what I was really hoping we would do, is something long-term, because to me and Stephanie talk about that. In 2012, you guys came up with a work session to get new water, and 13 years later, it's finally happening.
Yeah.
So that's when I asked to put 1, 2, 5, and 10-year goals. I was really hoping to see something that would actually really push the needle for Mitchell to move forward and grow like we always said. So to me, I would have loved to have seen something like that.
Yeah, and in 3 months, we'll have another fifth meeting Monday, so maybe there's a possibility of at least throwing out some options. Obviously, drainage and infrastructure is gonna be way past 10 years.
Yeah, and we talked about that at the November 24th, those master drainage projects, and that's why Joe and I got the last 3 different locations to do drainage studies, and you guys passed them, so good stuff comes out of these when we have long-term goals.
Well,
I
I
also-
mean, really, those water projects you've done and the sewer projects you've done, like you said, initiated from the 2015 discussion. The next major thing is really getting a handle on how are we gonna tackle the drainage projects, and then also just moving forward with everything you have on the list so far, too.
I just want to say that when I was pondering the questions that we were given on that survey, it made me realize how much we've been doing and how much progress we've made. And I know there's always going to be more there will always be more that needs to be done. But I really was thinking, gosh, I mean, you know, things like the recycling building or like I don't know, I just really kept kind of going through my brain about all of these things. And I'm like, you know, we have done, not that I'm trying to pat ourselves on the back, but I think that we've done some really good things for our community, and there will always be more things to be done, but it's not like we're backsliding, it's not like we're sitting back and saying, okay, let's just take a little breather here. I mean, it feels like constantly we're pushing, and we're working, and we're making progress. So kudos to all of you guys that make it happen.
all right, it's 7, so we'll adjourn.